Good evening. My name is Glen. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm from the Glen head group of Glen Cove in Long Island, New York, which is the best group in all the world. And if you don't think your group is the best group in all the world, well then don't leave it and screw up my group, all right? Just stay there and fix it. We're here to learn how to use the steps and use the traditions and use the concepts to make us have a better way of life. And that's what I'm trying to do with my group, trying to run my group. I'm going to tell you briefly what it used to be like, or what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like today, specifically me. I used to say when I first got sober that I was a guy that came from a dysfunctional family. I think the only thing dysfunctional was me in that family, but I came from a family that was kind of loving and caring for me, you know, and this mic is really intimidating. You know, I remember like being with my father, building a patio in the backyard, and doing things with him, and singing songs with my mother, and then all of a sudden, I don't remember anything anymore. Okay, there's a kind of a black spot, a gray out in my life, and I just don't remember it. I know my parents had a lot of parties, you know, sing along, that kind of thing. A lot of beer, a lot of wine flowing around, a lot of my uncles and aunts were hanging out in the backyard, and I got pictures of me and my cousins in this cabin up in the woods someplace, and we had beer cans, and now we kids woke up the next morning, saw beer cans all over the place, and we stacked them up one on top of another, made a pyramid, and this thing must have been 10 feet high. You know, and we thought that was really great. Now, is that sober drinking? I don't know. I'm not here to accuse my parents of being an alcoholic. I'm here only to talk about my own alcoholism. But I think there was some, okay? I think there was some alcoholism with my parents, and I think there was some use and abuse of alcohol, and I need to tell you about my alcoholism. My mother died when I was about 16, almost 17 years old, and I was really mad at my father. I was real mad at my father. You see, he knew about this. She had terminal cancer for a year, and he didn't tell us kids. I have two other sisters, and I was really pissed off at him. I said, you know, why didn't he tell us? What's going on here? And I was almost finished with high school, and I guess about 2 months after I finished high school, I left in the middle of the night. I got in my car, took all my 45s and all my worldly possessions, you know, my clothes, and that's it. Packed them up in the car and stole off into the middle of the night. I didn't want to tell him where I was going. I didn't want anything to do with him. So I lived in this little room, this rooming house, and I fell in love with a donut shop girl who lived in the room next to me. And for economic reasons, we decided to share one room. You know, one led to two, two led to three. Next thing you know, we got married. She was 18, I was 17. We stayed married for about, I guess, 6 years. And I went through college, became an engineer, electronic engineer. And things were going pretty good, but I was always into me. You know, I wanted what I wanted, when I wanted, and I just didn't want to hear about other people. I was pretty self-centered, self-seeking, selfish, all the stuff we've been talking about, they've been talking about over the weekend. I think the problem always was outside of me. You know, the problem was always out there. They didn't do their thing right the way I wanted it to be done. My wife didn't do this the way I wanted it to be done. Nothing was done the way I wanted it to be done. It was definitely an I program at that point in time. I had a real sick marriage. I think you can, well, it was just a lot of stuff that I was doing. I was so against drugs at that time. My wife was doing pot and I didn't even know about it, okay? And I was so naive that I just didn't even know about it. We got into motorcycles, and I was riding, we had 3 different motorcycles. I ended up with a Harley later on. And we were always trying to be, I I guess, trying to be different, trying to be different than everybody else. It was, I was always trying to fit in, even back in high school, I was trying to fit in with this clique or that clique. I mean, I was smart, but I didn't fit in with those collegiates. And I started going for sports, but I didn't fit in over there. So I hung out with the guys that hung out at the local donut shop, and that's how I married my wife, Well, in the middle of a bout of anger, she left. She took the dog and left me with the apartment and all the furniture, and I thought that was a pretty fair split. So that was it. Now I have a bachelor pad, okay? Now I'm from the hippy-dippy crew, so, everything was pads, So we were living in a bachelor pad now. I was, anyway. And things were going pretty good. I was able to do whatever I wanted to do, when I wanted to do it, with who I wanted to do it. And I just did that. I had a motorcycle, like I told you, and I took care of my motorcycle, and I kept it in the kitchen because I didn't have a garage. And the way to get into my apartment was through the kitchen door. So you actually had to walk around the back fender to get into the rest of the apartment. I used to fry eggs on the seat, But I used to have parties all the time. I had people over, and I'd say, hey, look at this, vroom, vroom, start it up in the kitchen. It would get all smoky in the living room and everything, But this is sanity, right? This is sane thinking. It was kind of strange because I never really felt comfortable any place I was. I was always trying to go to oblivion. I was always trying to drink to the point where I blacked out. Because when I blacked out, I was successful. If I blacked out, I was okay, because I knew I had a good time. Sometimes I used to wake up at parties, and I used to wake up on the front lawn. I knew I had a good time. I'd wake up in the bathtubs, which was one of my places I loved to sleep. I'd go in your bathtub, close the shower curtain, and just go to sleep. I'd wake up 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and try to get out of the house. But that was the way I liked to go to parties. I liked to drink to oblivion, drink to get out of feeling what was going on that day. I had this color organ. I said I was in electronics, so I built this thing called the color organ. The color organ is a thing that attaches to your stereo, and the high notes were attached to the yellow lights, and the medium notes were attached to the green lights, and the low notes were the blue colors. And I had these spotlights on the ceiling, and they were projecting on this wall of crinkled up aluminum foil, which had some black light posters on there. I had a black light on it. So when you play the music, the posters would start to throb, and if you got sufficiently drunk, you could see God in my living room. I was convinced of that. People used to come over just to witness to what was going on. Matter of fact, I used to party a lot. I used to party on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It didn't make a difference. Every day of the week. I used to get up, go to work. I always go to work. Go to work, party my buns off, go to sleep, get up, go to work. Friday was a good day. Got paid. I could really do some partying. And the people that I partied with on Monday night couldn't handle it on Tuesday night. So it was a different crew on Tuesday night. Wednesday night was another crew. Thursday night, the Monday night crew was back up to speed again, so they came around. So I always was burning out people in other crews. It didn't matter with me. I was just going to do it every day. I was just going to go. But I always seemed to have a timing problem, I think my whole drinking career would have been stopped if I could only conquer this timing problem. And this timing problem was something simple like, if I had 2 drinks, I would get just right. But I'd always be already on my 3rd drink when I thought about it, I'm getting just right. So now the 3rd drink kicks in, and then next thing you know, I missed it again. I went flying right past that spot, and I have to just keep going now because I'm on my roll. I never could get the timing just right. This 1 an hour thing that Charlie was talking about the other day. I never did 1 an hour. No way. I liked the feeling. I liked what it was doing to me. I liked what it was doing for me. So my idea of drinking was just getting blasted all the time. I never stopped at one. I would go out to restaurants, you know, if we were going out to dinner or something, and we'd stop at a bar, and we'd have a drink. This is before dinner. Then we'd always get there 15 minutes early to make sure we could have that drink at the bar. Then just before we get to the table, you know, the maitre d' or whatever would say, oh, it's time to sit down. And we say, okay, great, I'll have another one. I mean, you bring that drink to the table. Order a bottle of wine, because it's always the elegant thing to do when you're having a nice dinner. And then after a nice dinner, you have an aperitif or after dinner cordial or whatever. And then it's back to the bar before we go home. Is that sane drinking? Well, I thought it was. I look back on it now and I realize it was really sick. But that's the way I drank. That's the way it was. I was going to oblivion. I was never happy where I was. I was never comfortable. It was just one of those wacky things. I got married again. Wife number 2. For you guys keeping score, this is wife number 2. Wife number 2 and I were married for about 6 years. We had 2 whoopses, a girl and a boy. And after a while, I still wanted to party. I didn't want the responsibility of being a daddy, you know, and taking care of these kids. And I still wanted to party. And I would end up going to this pub on Saturdays, because Saturday was a nice day to be with the kids. But I would go to this pub called Porco's. And this is the place where I shot darts, you know. And I would take them there, and I would give them hamburgers and Cokes with the cherries in it, you know, that kind of thing. But I went there for the booze. Here it is on Saturday. I'm supposed to be spending time with the kids. And what am I doing? I'm still boozing, right? But I could justify this in my head. We used to have dart picnics. And the dart picnics was, you know, a bunch of guys getting together, playing softball and having clams and that kind of thing. And I'd bring the kids, and I'd get blasted. I'd drive home drunk. You know, it's pretty sick when I look back on it, the kinds of things I did, even with my kids. It just showed the lack of respect I had for myself, for my kids, for my family, for everybody around me. I was just full of destruction wherever I was. But I didn't think of it then. I didn't even feel it then. I didn't understand what was going on. It was going right over my head. I was always looking for the easier way, you know? I was always looking for the easier, softer way. I didn't hear those words until I came in here, but that's really what was going on. I was looking for a place where I could be happy. I got married again to my secretary again. There's another secretary, but my third wife, wife number 3, which is Jane. And wife number 3, or Jane, as I fondly call her, we had a pretty nice marriage for about 5 or 6 years. And she used to like to party with me. She used to like to have a good time. So there was really not a problem. We used to go out and drink, like I said. We used to go to restaurants, like I said. And we used to just have a good time. And after a while, she said, you know, this is really starting to get to me. I don't want to do this kind of thing anymore. And I said, okay, but I still continued to do it. And I tried to cut back a little bit at her persuasion, and it was difficult. And I stopped for a while. But then I came back, and I got involved with Better Living Through Chemistry, and started getting involved with other things, cocaine and that kind of thing. And I know this is an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but I thank God for cocaine, because it brought me to my knees so much faster, so that I could see the problem that I was having with drinking. September 10th, September 29th, 1987, my day of infamy. I had a fight with my boss, and I was pissed off at him. And like I normally do, if I got a raise, I would go down to the local Oasis and hoist a few. Or if, like this time, I was pissed off at him, I would go to the local Oasis and hoist a few. Or just if it was happy hour, I would go down to the local Oasis and hoist a few. Well, this was a good enough excuse, and I went down to this place. This place is called the Iron Horse. Now, the Iron Horse, ironically, is 1,000 feet from what became my home group, okay? So God was even in my life then, only I didn't know it. You know, my receiver has never been tuned to hear God's voices. I mean, I just couldn't hear his message. He's been talking to me all the time, you know, like the Footprints poem. And I just never heard it. Never paid attention to what was going on. Well, I go down there with my buddy and we're having a couple of shooters. Now we're having shooters of Irish mist. I used to like to drink Irish mist with beers. Now this is the kind of drink you have when you're in a bar with sawdust on the floor, okay? Now if I go to the kind of place where, you know, it's a nice fancy place, well then you drink with your pinky out and I'd have scotch and soda, you know. If I went to a fancy, another kind of a place, you know, you'd have the fancy beers. You'd have the Heinekens or the Becks or that kind of thing to be cool, you know. But it all worked for me. So this place was a Budweiser place with sawdust on the floor and Irish mist shots. We did 3 in a row. Now the way I like to drink, you see, is I'd get a shot and a beer, do those right away, and when the bartender came back with my change, well, I'd be empty and go, wow, you drank already? I goes, yeah, that's the way it is, you know, give me another one. He'd do that. I'd do that about 3 times because I knew 3 times I would start to light my fire. I knew I would be okay and I'd be on the road to where I wanted to get to. Well, my buddy and I were chatting and he says, gee, you know, I said, let's go over to my house and we'll do some shots. I had all these crazy cordials. I had a liquor cabinet with everything in the world, tequila and I can't even think of the names of it. Thank God. I'm getting better. Anyway, we did shots of everything I had in my liquor cabinet, you know. I don't read liquor ads anymore. That's a major change for me, you know. I used to do that. I used to give directions by bars. Now I give directions by Carvel stands, you know. So I know I'm getting better. But anyway, we did all the shots of these things that I had in my liquor cabinet. And I said, well, I have to go into Queens, which is the adjacent county, and I had to get some wine labels. See, I used to make wine. I don't look like a little old winemaker, but I made wine, right? What happened was about 5 years before this, Jane and I picked about 50 pounds of blueberries in Pennsylvania. Then we made blueberry muffins and blueberry pies, blueberry this, blueberry this. And what are you going to do with the blueberries that are left over? Now, there's a recipe in the back of the book that said how to make blueberry wine. Well, we made blueberry wine, and it was just delicious. We made a gallon of this stuff, put a little balloon on top of the bottle. It expanded. You could watch the whole process happening, you know. And it was great. I mean, we let it age at least a week, and then we drank it. It was terrific. It was real good. The next year, we went back to the same place, and we picked up another 50-something pounds of blueberries. We didn't make any muffins. We didn't make any pies. We didn't make any of the other stuff. We made nothing but blueberry wine, okay? We had fruit flies all through our apartment. I'll tell you, it was like a zoo. But it was all right. We liked that wine. It was good wine. Probably one of the best wines we made. After that, we got involved. You know, I heard Beverly D talk about it from California. She says, if a little bit is the right amount and more is better, then too much has got to be perfect. Now, I can understand that. I can really understand that. So we started getting into wine, and we started making more and more wine, and we started buying it from the local Italian guy right down, you know, Augie, little Augie, right down the road. And we buy these 42-pound cases of grapes. Now, you need 2 cases of grapes to make 5 gallons of wine. And you need 2 cases of grapes to make 5 gallons of wine. Well, we made, I don't know, 5 gallons of wine the first year, and 10 gallons, and 15 gallons. Well, cut to the chase, 1987, we had 3/4 tons of grapes delivered to my house. We had enough grapes to make 950 bottles of wine. We had Cabernet Sauvignon, we had this, we had that. I wanted to be like that guy with the Corinthian leather, you know, I wanted to have all of this wine in my cellar, like I was a big, wonderful guy, you know. Well, so that night we went into Queens to get some labels for making wine. And as we're driving in there, he had picked up a gram of Coke. Now, I hadn't had Coke in about 9 months prior to this. I had given it up at my wife's request. And we were doing some of that, and I was doing a lot of drinking, as I told you before, a lot of these shots. And we get into the city to buy these things, and I'm in a blackout already. I'm driving. I'm on the Long Island Expressway, you know, that famous road. And I'm in a total blackout. And what I'm going to tell you now is how the story was told to me by 2 or 3 other people, because I wasn't there. I don't know. I don't know what happened. To this day, I don't know what happened. Well, we're driving home, and we stop off at this other town. We have a couple of Johnny Walker Red and soda. That was my drink of choice. Actually, my drink of choice was more. I was telling somebody else that today. Joe's drink of choice was yours, right? But I had some more of these things, and now I'm all fired. It's only 11:30 at night, but I'm all fired up. I'm stoked up, right? I'm raring to go. Now, you remember this whole night started because I was pissed off at my boss. Well, I come home, my wife's sleeping, and I get on top of her and put my knees on her shoulders, and with my clenched fists, I started beating her face. Now, I never touched her before this. I would never step on an anthill. I mean, I wouldn't hurt anybody. I can't understand this. And to do such a horrendous act just appalls me even to today. But I need to say that because I need to remember where I came from. I need to remember what this disease does to me. I mean, it's terrible what I did to this woman. I woke up the next day and I was in this spare bedroom. I never sleep in a spare bedroom. I woke up at about 10 o'clock in the morning. I never sleep at 10 o'clock in the morning. If I wake up the next day, I have to go to work and I have to be there at 8 o'clock, otherwise I'm a drunk. You see, a drunk is a guy who doesn't show up for work. I'm a responsible guy, so I'm not a drunk. And she wasn't there. She was at her job. So I called her at work. I said, what happened? What's going on? And she said, well, you'll see when you get home. Well, when I got home, her face was all black and blue, starting to turn colors and stuff. She said she wanted me to go to court with her. Do I want to be served to appear in court, or do I want to go with her? And I went with her. I'm standing in front of the judge, and he gave me 3 stipulations, which was, 1, I can't have a drink in the house. My sick mind was thinking, well, I'll just drink outside the house. Okay? The second stipulation was that I can't come home drunk. My sick mind was thinking, well, I'll just have 1 beer, get a little high. I won't get real drunk, you know. The third stipulation is the thing that kind of scared me a little bit because I knew my number was up. Because Jane had asked the judge to put this third stipulation in there that said that I had to get counseling at the Alcohol Counseling Center in our town. Now that kind of scared me because I knew that they knew. I knew that I couldn't scam them anymore. You see, I used to go to a psychologist and I used to say, you know, do you drink? Oh God, no, I don't. Occasionally, you know, on holidays. Do you drug? Oh God, no, I don't do that kind of stuff. I'm paying this guy $100 an hour and I'm laughing at him. You know, I'm just lying to him, laughing at him, and I'm not telling him the truth. But that's where I was at. But I knew that these people at the Alcohol Counseling Center, I couldn't BS them. I go up there and then they're saying, it's maybe something you've heard once in a while down here, you know, don't drink and go to meetings. Well, that's what she said. She said, you got to not drink and go to meetings, and then you can stay here. And if you don't go to AA, you can't stay here. Now I knew that if I didn't stay there, I was going to be against the courts, and I was going to get 6 months in jail. So it was really a pending jail term that made me stay in AA, that made me go to AA. I went to this place, which was my home group, which turned later on into be my home group, the Glen group, the best group in all the world. And, you know, there was smoke from about a foot off the floor up to the ceiling, nothing but these 80-year-old people. It looked like God's waiting room. It was terrible. I mean, what are these people trying to do? I don't understand it. So I'm in there, and I'm going, okay, teach me. You know, what do you guys have to teach me? That's all right. I'll figure it out, you know. And they said, well, you got to do 90 and 90. And I'm going, 90 and 90. And I see these guys pounding down coffees. And I thought you got to drink 90 cups of coffee in 90 minutes. I don't know what they're trying to tell me. No, that wasn't it. They said, well, you know, the easier, softer way. You got to learn the easier, softer way. I said, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I didn't know that the easier, softer way is on the shades, you know, the steps and traditions. I later found that out when I started really working the program. But it was about 30 days of going to this hellhole trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing there, did I start to see the smiling faces and the dancing eyes. I looked around and I saw happy faces. I saw things going on in you guys that I never saw before. Not with my drinking buddies, not with my dart friends, none of this. And I couldn't understand it. You know, I said, why are these guys so happy, laughing and scratching and hugging and all this kind of stuff? What's going on here? I know that there was a scam. I know that something was happening. You know, they got a card game downstairs. Something, right? I didn't see it. About 45 days into my recovery, and I don't even want to say sobriety at this time because I don't think it was. It probably was the beginning part of it, but I like to say my recovery. A friend of mine came up to me, a guy I used to shoot darts with, and he said, listen, I don't know what you're doing, but it seems to be a lot better now. And I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to these stupid meetings. I don't know what it is. It seems to be okay. I'm having a good time. I'm not drinking. He goes, well, maybe I'll stop drinking too. And I felt great. Here I was telling this guy what's happening to me, and he's starting to get it. Okay? What was really happening, I'm 12-stepping this guy, and step schmeps, you know, I'm hanging on by white knuckles here, I don't know what I'm doing. And this guy is starting to say, well, yeah, maybe I'll stop drinking. Well, I felt great. I felt real good inside. He said, but I'm not ready to go to those stupid meetings with God's waiting room, you know, and all that stuff. He says, I'm not going to go to those. I said, that's okay, no problem. Well, he called me at work the next day. And he says, what time do I have to be ready for you to pick me up to take me to this meeting? You know, I just went ballistic. I said, wow, this is what it's all about. I started to feel good inside. You know, when I was drinking and hanging from the trees and just having a good old time going into oblivion, everybody would leave my home after a party and there'd be this hole inside of me. And this hole would always be empty and it wouldn't be filled until somebody came back into my room. That's why I partied every day. This hole was getting full every day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, this hole would get filled, and then when they'd go home, the hole would come back. I'd go to sleep. Well, now this hole started to get full, but it was from a different thing. And the hole started to get full, and I heard somebody say at a convention one time, it's called a God hole. And I see I'm not into God yet, but I understand it now. At that point in time, I didn't know what a God hole was. But that's what was happening to me. God was coming into my life and I didn't even know it. You know, I was looking for love in all the wrong places. I was looking for love in all these bars and in the bottle and all these different places, and I was never getting it. I don't know, I never thought I could ever be like one of those smiling people that I saw in that meeting room. I guess about 90 days into my recovery, it was just after 90 days, I went to a meeting, and you know, in our area, you get coins for medallions for 90 days, 90-day chip. And after 90 days, you can go out and speak. Not that you can speak on the steps, but you can go out and speak and share your experience, strength, and hope with others at an open meeting, because that's all you got. You can't do a closed meeting and all that. But I went into my group. It was on January 25th. I just had gotten 90 days. I was about 100 and something days. And my sponsor comes over. Oh, you see, my sponsor was the chairman of the group. I had to have the best sponsor. So the chairman of the group, you're it, you know, that kind of thing. So the chairman of the group came over to me and said, well, the outside speaker didn't come in tonight, so could you speak? I said, sure, I'd be happy to. You know, whenever the hand reaches out, I'm supposed to be there. And that's what he taught me anyway. So I sat there, and you know, to this day, I guess it wasn't until about maybe 2 years ago that I realized he knew that the guy wasn't coming in. He planned it that way. He knew how many days I had. He knew that the date was going to be open. He knew I'd be coming down the stairs. He was going to bag me and say, you're going to speak. But I never knew that, but that's how sponsors are. You know, they're so cunning and baffling. Anyway, I'm sitting there telling my story to my home group for the first time. And I stopped and I realized January 25th is my birthday. And what a great birthday. My first sober birthday, to be telling my story to my friends, my new family, you know. It was a pretty neat thing. There's been a lot of coincidences that started to happen since then. And I call them coincidences because that's what they were at the time. I know what they are now, but that's what they were at the time. I started to feel a little gratitude. I started to feel a little gratitude for my group, group of junks, G-O-D, because I didn't have him. And I started to have a little gratitude for the group of drunks that kept me sober. The Glen Head group, best group in all the world. And I decided I was going to do something. And I wanted to buy him a case of big books. I mean, what does an alcoholic do but buy a big thing, And I want a case of the hardcover books, not these little things, books. The most expensive big books you got. I want them, And I talked to an old guy about it. I said, hey, I'd like to buy a case of these big books. And the old guy was telling me, he's got 20 some odd years. These guys are gems, I'll tell you, they really are. He's telling me, well, they just made me book person over here, and instead of you buying a case of these big books, why don't you become the book person? It doesn't have to cost you anything, but every day you come down, set up the books, put them in nice little order here, and anybody wants a book, you take their money and put it in the basket, and you work that out and order the books, make sure we got all the right stuff. I said, yeah, I can do that. So, if a little bit is the right amount, more is better, and too much is perfect. We had every book. We had 50 copies of every book, right? I'm asking the treasurer, more money, give me books. I got to have more money, right? The guy said, I have no more money for the rent. What are you talking about? I said, books, we got to carry the message. So pamphlets, everything. Hazelton, we started getting into other literature, right? Then we got into the controversy in my group. Well, since we have so much other literature, we got to keep it separate. So we had 2 tables. Got to keep them separate. They can't even touch, the 2 tables can't touch. A real sick group, but we're getting better, So I keep asking the treasurer for more and more money. Now this is how AA works. This is a classic, okay? The treasurer's going crazy. He says, I can't take this guy anymore. He's asking me for more money every time. I don't know what to do with the guy. So we had a steering committee at the time. This is the old bleeding deacons would get in the corner and they have a little meeting before the business meeting, and then they'd come out and say, this is what we should do. And everybody goes, oh yeah, that's a cool idea, We were being directed by these guys. Anyway, the steering committee decided that we should have an election for a new treasurer. Well, I got nominated. Next thing you know, I'm treasurer and book person. So I have to get the books and pay the rent. That's how AA works. AA is the only place where I think a treasurer can collect the money, and as sometimes happens, a guy goes out with the money. Goes out and starts swinging from the trees again. And he comes back about 2 weeks later and he says, hey, I'm really sorry, but I stole the group's money, but, I'm really sorry and I want to get sober. And they said, that's okay, we need a treasurer. That's AA. And I really have a fondness for AA because that's what it does. I mean, it really, it just brings you back to a family that I never had. This guy, John, who came over at my house at 45 days, and I started to show him what was happening to me. Thanksgiving Day. Now, it's just over a year for me. October 10th is my actual day. You see, October 10th, this is another interesting thing. September 29th, I said, was my day of infamy, right? Well, I had a half a glass of wine on October 10th in my backyard. In my backyard, not in the house, right? In my backyard. And I'm coming up on 90 days, and I said, gee, it's really great. I'm excited, 90 days. And my wife says, no, you didn't have 90 days. Remember, you had a half a glass of wine with your buddy in the backyard. So I reset 13 days. And when I reset 13 days, I stopped counting. I started to realize that this is a day-by-day thing, that if I just don't drink, go to meetings, work the steps, call your sponsor, read the big book, on a daily basis, I'll be okay. And that's what happened. You see, God took me and just gave me another chance to get my 99. I wasn't making 90 by that time. I only had 75 meetings or whatever. So like a good alcoholic, I tripled up on meetings. I went to 4 meetings a day, whatever I needed. But then by the 90th day, I had 90 meetings. And on that 90th day, by the way, I went to this place, which is a real old church. It's a beautiful church, and I staged the whole thing. I want to have my 90th meeting there. This is my 90th meeting, 90 days. This is going to be it. Perfect. And it started to snow like crazy. And I'm at work, and the snow was coming down. Maybe it's 1.5 feet, 2 feet deep at noon. They're starting to send people home. I call Intergroup. I said, Intergroup, is there going to be a meeting there? Is the meeting going to be open? He says, hey, are the bars open? I said, yeah, okay. So I went down there. There was nobody down there. And a car pulled up with 2 people in it. I said, that's it. I'm going to have a meeting in the car. I don't care. We're going to have 90 meetings in 90 days. So that's how I got my 90th meeting. There's been a lot more coincidences that's happened to me in my recovery, and I want to share a couple of these with you because that's what it's all about with me. It's all about God coming into my life. You see, I never had God. I went to Jose Silva Mind Control. I wanted to learn how to control my mind. I wanted to get really inspirational with myself. I wanted to do yoga. I did transcendental meditation. I was always looking for something that was right in front of my face. It was inside of me all the time. And you guys showed me that. And I want to share a little bit of that with you because that's really what the program is for me. I was talking about working the steps, and my 4th step was a kind of an interesting thing. In fact, these guys don't know it, but it was Joe and Charlie that got me to do the 4th step the way it should be done. See, I had pamphlets. I'm an engineer, so I had pamphlets all over the place. I had the grid paper, you know, and I had this paper, the chart paper. I was going to graph this thing. I was going to put it into the computer. I had the whole deal. And I couldn't get it off the ground. I just couldn't get started. I had all the materials, but I just couldn't get started. And then I heard the tapes of these guys, how they explained it in a simple way that even I could understand, you know. See, I was too smart. That's really what it was. I was too smart for my own recovery. But they explained it to me, and I was able to take those sheets and start working on it. Now, it was about 6 months of me putting this thing down, procrastinating doing it. I heard somebody say, by the way, it takes 2 years and 2 hours to do a 4th step. 2 years to procrastinate about it and 2 hours to do it. I can understand that, okay? I'm not advocating 2 years, but I can understand that. Anyway, my company was sending me on coast-to-coast trips, California. And I had to go to 16 trips in 16 weeks. And I'm like, oh man, what am I doing this for? This is crazy. You know, like, why am I doing this? Well, I had this 5-hour flight each way, and I'd take this stupid 4th step, stick it in my attaché case, and I'm going on the plane, suit and all, you know. And I'm sitting there, and what do? You know, normally you would drink, but I'm not drinking now, so what am I doing? So I'd say, well, let me just look at some work that I'm supposed to be doing. I'd open up the attaché case, and the 4th step would fall on the floor. You know, I quick grab it, because my deepest, darkest secrets are now on the floor in the airplane, right? Like, everybody's going to understand what's on these sheets of paper, right? You know, I was restless, irritable, discontented. Yeah, right, you know. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. But I'd get to the hotel, I'd open my attaché case again, it would fall out. I would get to the place where I had to be, and now I'm in an office with other people, and I open it up, and there it was, you know. Finally, I start to get the picture. You know, sometimes you got to hit me in the head with a 4x4. I'm supposed to be working on this 4th step while I'm in the air. It's 5 hours of doing nothing. Why not? So I'd like to think that I did my 4th step at 30,000 feet. You know, it's closer to God. When I did my first 4th step, I was closer to God. Now, doing the 5th step was another story. I didn't know who I was going to do. I wasn't that tight with my sponsor yet, okay? And I wanted to share this stuff with him, but I really wasn't sure if he was the right guy. You know, I read the loophole. You can pull a clergy, you know, you can do something like that. And I was looking for the right guy. Well, I had asked him also about going to a Matt Talbot retreat. And he said to me that he was going to look into it. And I guess I thought about it a little bit. Now we're talking about prayer and meditation, but I don't know those words yet, you know what I mean? But I thought about it a little bit, and I said, no, I think I'm going to do it with my sponsor. I think he's probably the best guy. Well, when I made that decision, I made that decision. I'm so smart. When that decision was made for me, and I went to my group and I met my sponsor, he says, geez, I got great news for you. I said, I have great news for you too, and I decided I want to do the 5th step, and I'd like for you to do it. He goes, well, great. I want to, he said, the information on the retreat is right here, and I'd like to go on the retreat with you. I said, perfect. We'll do the 5th step at the retreat. Coincidence? As Joe says, is it odd or is it God? I don't know. We go to this retreat. Saturday night, we allocated some time. And I got these 20, 30 pages, whatever it is, the volume, you know, the thing that's bound. And all right. I bring this thing, we sit down in our bedroom. I'm all set to, you know, here we go. Okay? And I said, wait a minute. Before we get into this, there's something I got to tell you that's not on the sheets. And we started talking about something that was really bugging me. And we talked about this one thing for about an hour. And that was the thing that was blocking me from doing God's will. And I had no idea that it was that one thing. I didn't even put it down on paper. It was so deep, dark, secret, you know. But that's how it works. When I really became willing to share this with God, myself, and another human being, you know, there's a little ceremony that I go through when I do 5th steps. We get on our knees, we say the 3rd step prayer, we hold hands, and we ask God to come in the room so that he can help us with this thing that we're about to do. And it was just like that. That's how it was taught to me. And it was just like that time. And I'll never forget it. The Sunday we went into the chapel, and the person leading the retreat said, you take all your deepest, darkest secrets. I said, hey, man, I got them identified. I know who they are, what they are. I got them all written down. I'm all set, right? Take all these character defects that you want to get rid of, put them on a piece of paper, and crinkle them up, and put them in this pail, and they lit it up, and I watched the smoke go up to the top of the chapel. I felt everything coming right out of me like that. And I felt the 6th and 7th step. It was like God came right through me and filled this hole that was inside of me on a permanent basis. And I knew that it was like the Allstate commercial. I was in good hands. I knew I was going to be taken care of, you know. From that point on, it was just an amazing thing that happened to me. I started working the steps, the amend steps, and again, coincidences started happening. What's really happening is that God is in my life more and more to a point, and I'm getting in tune to it, to a point where when he says, gives me direction, you know, like, and it could be through a commercial on TV, it could be through opening the book, it could be through anything. I got my receiver tuned, and I start to hear it. And that's what's happening now. That's what's starting to happen in my recovery. I'm starting to hear what he's saying to me. All the times I never heard those radio stations. I was listening to some rock and roll station. So I started to do my amends, and I went to pick up my kids. Now, before, every day, I'd pray. Every day I'd say the 3rd step prayer until I finally memorized it, and then I would say the 3rd step prayer to myself, and I would ask God to give me a lot of money, let me win the lottery, do these things, do that thing, you know, that kind of thing. And I started talking to my sponsor, and he asked me, well, what do you do in the morning? I said, well, you know, I pray a 3rd step prayer and this and that. He goes, well, you do that on your knees, right? I said, what, on my knees? No, I don't do that. He said, well, you got to do that on your knees. I said, why? What's the difference? You know, I can do it on taking a shower, shaving. What's the difference? He says, no. You do it on the knees, and then, like Charlie was saying, he's the father, we are the children. It's another degree of being humble. And I didn't understand it, but I'm willing to do whatever he says, because I believe in this guy. And I started doing it on my knees. The miracle started happening tenfold. Okay, and I can't pinpoint exactly how it happened because it just changes. You know, I start to notice these things in my life, and it just happens all the time now. There are things like, I went to pick up my kids. This is the amends thing. I went to pick up my kids for the weekend. See, I have rent-a-kids, right? They're living with my ex-wife and my husband-in-law. And I went to pick them up, and they weren't ready. They had to go upstairs and do something. All right, put on their clothes or whatever. And my husband-in-law went in the other room, and he's playing guitar, doing what he does. So next thing you know, I'm left there with my ex-wife, and she says, do you want to have a cup of coffee? What do you guys say when you want to talk? Do you want to have a cup of coffee? I'm getting chills now. I'm telling you, it's great stuff. So we sat down, and we talked. And I shared a little bit about what I'm trying to do, what I'm working on, and how I was a little remorseful for some of the stuff I had done to her. And she said, it's okay. I understand. I'm really glad that you're getting yourself together. That's all I ever wanted. That's pretty neat to know. I went and saw my father. Remember, I was mad at him because he kept this thing about my mother's terminal illness. There's a Freudian slip there, and we'll get to that in a minute. And I said, gee, Dad, I just want to talk to you real serious. And we're sitting at the table. Now, he's not in recovery or anything. He doesn't know anything about steps, schmeps, or anything, And we're sitting there just talking, and he grabs my arm in the middle of this thing. He says, you don't have to carry that guilt anymore. I didn't even tell him what I was talking about. Now, where did that come from? Where did that come from? That come from getting on my knees and saying, God, I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do today. You just show me what you want me to do. Just show me. Don't give me the lottery. I'm not talking about that stuff anymore. Just show me what you want me to do. Show me your job. What's my job? Show me what you want me to do today. I'm starting to feel a lot more comfortable all the time. I never used to be comfortable. I was only comfortable when I was out of my face, when I was in oblivion. I was only comfortable when I was just getting whacked. Now I'm starting to feel comfortable most of the time. I don't want to say all the time, most of the time. I start sponsoring guys. The first guy I sponsored, this is God's infinite wisdom, the first guy I sponsored had 89 days. We're doing real good, okay? He said, well, I don't know if I believe in this God thing. And I said, well, that's okay. You don't have to believe in it. Just try it. And he said, well, how am I supposed to know? I said, well, with me, it was coincidences. We would think coincidences would start to happen, and I would start to say, well, yeah, I believe in a God. There has to be a God for these coincidences to happen. So I asked him to write these things down as he's going through his day. So he started to write down coincidences, anything that was odd. Okay? He was driving home from my house, and he's driving down the road at night, and a street light goes out. He calls me up when he gets home. He says, what do you think? Is that a coincidence? I said, I don't know. Maybe it is for you. Write it down. We'll see. The next night he comes over, we chat a little bit, goes home. Driving down that same road, that same street light is burnt out. All the other ones are on, right? All of a sudden it blinks on. He calls me up and he says, hey, I believe. I understand what you're talking about. I go down the road and street lights blink at me all the time. And I laugh. I smile. I say, oh, I know. You're here. Okay. It's cool. I got it. It's nice. I'm in good hands, He's with me all the time. It's a real cute story. This guy wants me to be a sponsor, but he never had the guts to ask me. Anyway, he's got this problem with this guy, Pete. Now, he's running this hospital meeting, and Pete is the liaison between the hospital and AA, and AA, so everything has to go through this guy, Pete. And he's getting really annoyed with Pete. So he says, can I help him with this problem? I said, well, sure, come on over. So I'm taking him to work one day, and we're in the car, and he's ranting and raving. I don't want to do it Pete's way. This is such a pain in the ass. Why is Pete always breaking my chops? I said, well, I don't know. I don't know what it's all about. But if you just pray, if you just get with God, it'll be okay. So he stops, and he starts to laugh. And I said, well, what are you laughing about? He goes, look at that car next to us. Now, next to us, there was a car, and the license plate said, Pete's Way. All right? Now, is that odd, or is that God? All right? It's things like that. I know God is in my life. The evidence is overwhelming. I know he's in my life. I'm so grateful to my sponsors, to my sponsor, and to my sponsees. Through my sponsees, when I talk to them, I hear stuff that I need to be listening to. And it's not until after they ask me a silly question, I say, well, you probably should be reading the big book. And you know, third step and page 58 and all these things that and I go, oh, when was the last time I did that? You know, so is that God talking to me then? Of course it is. My sponsor keeps me in line because he looks at me from a different vantage point, you know, from a place that I can't see, because I'm too close to me. That was always my problem. I had the problem. This is a we program. When I use the we part of the program and I ask him to look at me, I'm okay. I'm okay for today. And that's just how my life has been. I'm okay for today. I'm learning various degrees of honesty. I think I saw that in one of my daily meditation books in the last couple of days. Degrees of honesty. That's kind of interesting because I could convince myself I was doing the right thing. No matter what I was doing, I can convince myself it was the right thing. See this pizza? I could eat this whole pizza. It's okay because it's hollow calories or something. I mean, you know, I could justify it. But now, the various degrees of honesty I can get into now, I see as I get more and more in recovery, I get more and more sober, that there are things that I really got to get honest with, deep down inside. When we went out for, my daughter and I went out for a pizza, the guy gave me $2 too much. No big deal. I caught it. I said, hey, you gave me $2. My daughter went, what did you do? I said, well, that's the right thing to do. Now, what was I doing? I was showing by example, you know, by attraction, not by promotion. That was the best lesson I could give my daughter. I didn't know I was doing it that way, but that's really what was happening. See how God's in my life? He's in my life every day. Thank God I don't have to do the big jobs. I heard another guy on a tape say that he has a relationship, he has a partnership with God. And God is the senior partner, he's the junior partner. He makes all the big contracts, and he just orders the pens and pads. And I can do that today. I can order pens and pads, and I'll be okay. And I leave all the big decisions to God. And when I do that, I'm okay just for today. And I want to thank you for helping me keep sober one more day today.